Special episode, meaning special outfit. Let's go. The first week of May, I had the privilege and honor and pleasure of attending a special screening of Afropunk, the original documentary. James Spooner, the filmmaker, hosted this as a fundraiser to get Afropunk on streaming platforms, and I think we've achieved that number by now. And what was so great about this event was seeing the cultural impact that this one documentary had. Concerts, community, more Black kids starting their own bands. I dare say that the Afropunk documentary was a huge influence in planting a seed in me to say yes. Yes to joining a band in my midlife. Yes to touring with said band. Yes to rocking out. And yes to expressing the visual glam side of rock and roll. I reference that visual history of glam with every performance. Y'all, okay. Visual identity is infrastructure. It cannot be divorced of the greater politics happening around it. It can't be divorced from the context of history it's in. No matter what the art is and the building blocks that go into that art, it's not timeless and it's up for critique, which is why visual identity is an infrastructure that builds the path on which an audience walks. A24. You know what I mean when I say A24. Visual identity is that girl. And I bring this up because, as you saw in the preceding clips, I got to go and see and celebrate the fact that James Spooner finally got the rights back to the Afropunk name so he can re-release his documentary. Paired with the fact that we just recently, as you saw in previous videos, us guys in the Jungle Swank have done our first photo shoot in 2 years, and we wrapped up our first music video. The garage rock scene is not the punk scene in the late 90s, early 2000s. There is a visual identity that when I say garage rock, then if you know, you know. And then when you see me up on that stage, you're not surprised. In fact, you're affirmed by how I present myself. Or when I say punk rock, if you know, you know, and then you're not surprised when you go to a punk show and you see the way fans and musicians present themselves. Take Afropunk, right? Afropunk, the documentary, was so good. I am so glad I finally got to see it. Finally. When I first heard of the documentary, just to know that there were these bands and these fans that were out there, I didn't feel alone anymore. Afropunk, even though it's a documentary showcasing fans and musicians who are Black and who are part of the punk lifestyle, as well as fans of punk music, still they weren't divorced from the context of the visual identity of punk. Because you look at what they're wearing, and it's like, of course that's what they're wearing. Because you wind it all the way back to allegedly the first punk band ever, but in my opinion, that's Death out of Detroit. And if you've seen a band called Death, you would know. The Sex Pistols. And those who really know that as much as we give the Sex Pistols their props, as much as we love the Sex Pistols, they were a creation. Okay, editor's note, editor meaning me, I proceed to make a huge mistake, and I know I'm making this mistake, okay? So I'm just telling you right now, I know it was Vivienne Westwood and that the manager was Malcolm McLaren. I'm fixing it, okay? They were essentially a boy band that were a collaboration between Betsey Johnson and, what's his name? Betsey Johnson was selling an aesthetic based on her very working class roots in England. And her and what's his name? I can't remember. They came together and in order to sell this aesthetic, created that sound based on blues and rock and soul, but with an edge that gave voice to, you know, the poor and the working class in the UK back then. You want to rewind some visual architecture back? You can thank Betsey Johnson for the looks you see in Afro-punk 30, 40 years later. So when I say punk and you think of a certain kind of aesthetic, a certain kind of visual, it's not divorced from a lifestyle, even though the Sex Pistols were a bit of a boy band creation to sell an aesthetic. That doesn't change the fact that it came from a very specific political time in the UK, and the outfits and the lifestyle were therefore and still are countercultural. So when you see how we present ourselves, if you come to a Jungle Swank show and we're garage rock, I mean, some people would call us punkabilly adjacent, people means me. We look garage rock, we look pre-Stones, we have that aesthetic. The fact that we end up doing a lot of biker bar type shows is not surprising. We look like we fit in. It's a visual architecture through which a biker and someone who loves punk and someone who loves classic rock and roll could come to one of our shows, see us, hear our music, and say, that fits, that goes together. Now, there's a little hullabaloo happening the past week or so regarding Olivia Rodrigo. The baby doll dress, here's my opinion about it. It's not controversial until she said that she's referencing Riot Girls of the 90s and Courtney Love. Oh, Gen Z children, oh, Gen Alpha, let an auntie take you back. The girl groups of the 90s and rock who were wearing the baby doll dresses weren't wearing them straight off the rack or straight off the package. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm saying that the way they presented themselves, their visual architecture, and let's just go ahead and say Courtney Love. Yeah, she wore a baby doll dress. She ripped that shit. She tore it. She made sure that there were marks on it, that it was a little half dirty. She was making a very specific political statement that was against the sexualization of women and the pedophilic way that patriarchy insists on condescending to grown women. Those ladies back in the 90s weren't trying to be cute in a baby doll dress. They made very specific alterations to those dresses when they presented themselves on stage to let you know, I'm not your fucking baby doll. I'm not your fucking anything. I am me. I will be the woman that I want to be. I'm not cute. I'm not here to be coquettish for you. I am not for the male gaze. Now, Olivia Rodrigo, girl, it's okay to just like the baby doll dress. Okay? You don't have to reference your 90s influences when it comes to fashion. Once you brought them in, that's where the controversy started, and it could have been a controversy if you just would have said, I like a baby doll dress. Now, we can critique that. You don't get to escape critique just because whatever. You're making art. And the time of where we are now seeing, and the veil has fallen, we know what it means when we say the Epstein class. Now that we know how rampant pedophilia is, violence against little girls, if you want to sexualize yourself as a grown woman and do that, go ahead, fine, whatever. I'm not into it, but you didn't ask my opinion. But what I'm saying is when you think of visuals, and you want to make a reference, just know you're responsible for what you put out there. If you want to say, I'm referencing those firebrand girl rock groups of the 90s, you're not pulling that straight off the rack and putting it on and being, tee-hee, you can see my underwear. Now listen, I want y'all to know, I'm a very sensual and sexual woman. I promise I'm not a prude. And there are many ways in which I find the male gaze kind of fun to play with. Many ways in which I do play with it. I'm not even denigrating that. I'm not gonna yuck your yum until you make it my problem. It's just not that thoughtful. It's not thoughtful. And I would hope that when artists, it's very rare to be successful at the level that someone like an Olivia Rodrigo is, and we can just hope that at that level you can have a bit more responsibility and more curiosity. More curiosity about history and politics and how that intersects with art. You know, that's not hard for me to do. I went to freaking art school, okay? My grade was dependent on me being familiar with all that. I mean, I'm your auntie. I just gotta tell you what's up. But you're allowed to disagree. Just let me know in the comments. Agree, disagree, think I'm an old bat that needs to shut the fuck up? You can tell me, but I still don't care. I just hope you found something useful out of what I say. Make sure you're on my email list for updates about gigs and such. The link to sign up is in the description below, along with links to the soundtrack of this video and other info I reference. Also, there's a link in the description to leave a tip if you should so choose, and I think you should choose. All right, love you. Bye.